Warning. You are entering a restricted area. Return to where you came from, or be destroyed.
You're heading your way towards the useless nerdy knowledge. Please do not go any further. If you will not comply, you will hear a nerd rambling.
Nerd alert!
Get those nerds! Nerd! 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 Exterminate!
Go ahead, make my day.
Bazinga!
I'll be back.
Hello, fellow podcast listeners. Welcome to another episode of Useless Nerdy Knowledge. My name is Ben, and I am the Sumerian shapeshifting god of destruction, also known as Gozer. Okay, no, I'm actually not. But I do want to apologize ahead of time for not making an episode in pretty much a month. It's just that, I don't know, this entire week of November, I really wanted to make more. I just didn't know exactly what I wanted to talk about, really, and I just haven't really been in the mood, so I apologize for anyone wanting a new episode in this past, month. So I apologize ahead of time. I am very sorry for that, but I am now in the mood to talk about a small franchise, and this is basically about the popular horror, kind of horror, mostly comedy series of Ghostbusters, including my thoughts on the latest movie, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which I believe is a sequel to, I think, only the first one. I don't know, it's been debated if it's a sequel to both the first two movies, or if it's just the first one in general. I don't really know, it could be either one, but anyway, I'll go ahead and basically talk about the first Ghostbusters movie from 1984. This was written, of course, by Dan Aykroyd and the legendary Harold Ramis. And basically, this was a huge smash hit back in the 80s, because this was just an absolute great comedy for what it is. It has an excellent cast, a really great imaginative ghostly characters. Basically, the starring casts of this movie are of Bill Murray, who's known for being in a few other Harold Ramis movies, I believe the first one that Bill Murray was in that I believe Harold Ramis also wrote was Meatballs, and that's another one of my favorite Bill Murray movies, because it's a comedy, and it's basically set around a campground. I believe that this was in 1979. But yeah, I think it was one of the first, if not the first Bill Murray comedy. I could be wrong, but I'm probably wrong. I probably saw it maybe later. But anyway, the other ones would be Stripes, which was another one, and then Groundhog Day. There's been a few others, but yeah, basically Bill Murray and Harold Ramis had their pretty legendary films when they worked together. Harold Ramis was more of a writer, I feel like it, but he was still really great. And then, of course, you have Dan Aykroyd in there. Harold Ramis, even though he's the writer in this movie, he stars in this as well. And then, of course, we got good old Ernie Hudson, and then Annie Potts, who's the assistant. And we also have Sigourney Weaver, who's the love interest of Bill Murray, and Rick Moranis, who's just a side character, but a bit of a little comic relief of the geeky type of guy, I guess he would say. There are, a few other cast members, but they only show themselves very briefly, but other than that, this movie works very great. It has great visual effects, and they're a bit, I don't know exactly how to describe it. I want to say they're very cartoony, but not over the top scary exactly. They're kind of a mix between live action cartoons, making it very cartoony in a way. They have some very, very memorable not just human characters in this, but mainly memorable ghost characters in there, of course. There's, of course, the very, very infamous Slimer, who's all green, a big floating blob who eats and slimes people. So, yeah, anytime you think of Ghostbusters, you either think of Slimer or the other infamous ghost, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. We'll get to him in a bit. But then, of course, there's like a couple other ghosts that only make brief appearances, but not exactly too important. And the main focus, or the main villain, I guess you would say, would be Gozer, who requires two of its dogs, which is Vince Clortho, who is the Keymaster, and Zool, who is the Gatekeeper. Um, Basically, the two of those demon dogs separate to find and possess a human of, I believe, their gender, and they basically find each other, get down to business, is what I would like to say, and basically summon Gozer to basically um, wreak havoc on the entire world. Because I believe that they explain that Gozer is like basically like a ghost that walks among others. I can't remember exactly. I just watched it recently too, and I still can't remember exactly. But other than that, that's basically the whole plot. And then basically they are kicked out of the whole plot is that, like, and there are spoilers, of course, if you haven't seen the Ghostbusters. It's been out since 1984, so I feel like you should have seen it already. But anyway, so basically the whole plot is that, like, Aykroyd's character, let's see, Stance, Venkman, and um, Egon, Spengler, basically are kicked out of the university because their science experiments aren't doing very well, and then they decide to do some paranormal investigating on a library that basically had like a ghost basically scare her, and they encounter it, and they decide to basically form what they call the Ghostbusters, and basically they're kind of like exterminators, but they basically exterminate ghosts. So they have all these different nifty equipment. They have the infamous Ecto-1, the Ghostbusters car, and they have their own firehouse, which is really cool. And eventually, we get to see Annie Potts, who plays basically the assistant, and Annie Potts is great. She's very, very awesome. And we eventually get to see Ernie Hudson, who becomes the fourth member of the Ghostbusters, who's really great. Of course, Sigourney Weaver, as I mentioned, is the love interest, and you might, of course, recognize her from other sci-fi classics like Alien and Aliens. So it's great to see her in there. I feel like that the movie wouldn't be great without her. And then, of course, they basically, become very famous, but then, of course, they are basically have some controversy in New York, basically of saying, hey, they're destroying property, or they have like some sort of health hazard and all this stuff. So there's this giant a-hole that comes in saying they're harming the environment with their ghost traps and all this other different things, and they don't know what they're doing. So he demands to have it shut down and all that stuff. And of course, it becomes extremely catastrophic because they basically release all the ghosts out, and that basically causes more I guess power in New York to summon Gozer. I'm not exactly sure, but basically it's like around there. So eventually, Gozer shows up, and the Ghostbusters head to, oh boy, where is it? I want to say it's like the Chrysler Building, and they basically try to stop Gozer, and it's basically like a weird type of, I don't know what you want to call it, like a he-she type of hybrid ghost thing, whatever. They basically say it can be whatever it wants to be. It's like it could be a he-she, whatever the hell. Anyway, basically later towards the film they mentioned that she like says like choose the form of your destructor, basically like a huge type of thing, like a giant monster basically, like, but it could be of anything, like literally anything. You think of one thing, and basically thanks to Stance, he thinks of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, which of course is a bit harmless because that's his idea of thinking, no one can harm us, not Mr. Stay Puft, but of course he is very, very harmful. But of course with the Ghostbusters, you can't think of Ghostbusters without also thinking of the giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He's probably one of the most memorable ghosts or monsters, whatever you want to call it, in that entire movie, because he's a giant guy in a suit, kind of like Godzilla. So yeah, he's pretty cool. Even though his appearance is very brief, he's still really cool to be in there. And they basically eventually, stop Gozer, destroy Stay Puft. His marshmallow bits are all over the place, and it's a great movie. It's a great comedy. It's a great visually appealing movie, and it's just absolutely fantastic. So of course there was like all these different toys and merchandise type things going on. They even had an animated series called The Real Ghostbusters for a while, and that's where like the toys and stuff came out, and that was obviously really great. I forgot when that came out. I want to say it came out in like the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there. But yeah, And then, of course, 5 years later, there was the sequel, Ghostbusters 2, that people don't necessarily like, but, um, I felt like it was one of those things where it's like, it's popular, so, it has to be made and all this stuff. Basically, the exact same cast comes back. The only difference is that this time, Sigourney Weaver's character, Dana, has a baby, and basically she's taking care of that. And the whole plot is that there's an ancient um, ghost ruler named Vigo, who basically is in a painting, who is trying to, I guess, possess the body of Dana's baby to eventually, go into the real world and eventually rule the world or something like that. And then, of course, there's like all this pink slime that if it like possesses something like an object, like a toaster or something like that, if you talk to it or yell at it negatively, it responds very negatively. But if you respond to it nicely, it responds very nicely, like it can dance and all this stuff. And so what they decide to do is to, I believe, head from one place to the other, is to basically cover the entire Statue of Liberty in slime and move it from one place to another. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about it. Ghostbusters 2, it's not a great film, but it has its highlights. Sadly, of course, there were all these different talks about, like, over the years after Ghostbusters 2 came out, like, is there going to be a Ghostbusters 3? And, of course, since Bill Murray didn't want any part of it, that would definitely ruin the magic, and I could totally understand that. There was all these different things of, like, will there be a Ghostbusters 3? And all we got were, like, cameos from people who would be Ghostbusters and all this stuff. We still had the animated series, a few toys here and there. Eventually, we did get the Ghostbusters video game, which was on Xbox 360, and there is a remastered version, of course, and I believe I saw it on PlayStation 4, which has the original four Ghostbusters reprising their role. So that's the closest thing we got to a Ghostbusters 3. But then, of course, in 2016, we have the what I like to call reboot that shall not be named or mentioned. But you can easily find that piece of garbage in like a $3 bargain bin. Like, I kid you not, it's $3. You can find it, and no one will still buy it. So anyway, after that abomination came out, of course, Harold Ramis passed away in 2014, which was a huge loss and a huge shame because he was great. It just feels like part of the team is gone, and it just really sucks. So basically, in 2020, or no, I want to say that the first time I saw the trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife, I believe was in late 2019, or maybe it was earlier than that. I don't recall exactly, but I remember seeing the trailer and I was so hyped because I did some research and all this stuff saying that there was going to be a whole cast, the original cast members returning. All it was going to be the way it was supposed to, the third Ghostbusters was supposed to be, and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so cool! I can't wait to see it. But then, of course, so this was supposed to come out in summer of 2020, and you know what happens with 2020. So, of course, about a year and more went by, and basically, eventually, it would come out in November of 2021. And the other cool thing was that there was a tie-in with High C Ecto Cooler returning. This was something that came out like 30 years ago, I want to say, of like High C cross-promoting with Ecto Cooler with their Ghostbusters Slimer. Basically, it's like a citrus drink that's like all green and all that stuff. I've personally never had one, of course, but you can only get these exclusively at movie theaters, and I so far don't have one. I went to the movie theater to see if they had any, and they don't. I kind of figured that it was like more at one of those places that has like an actual huge movie theater that probably would have those things. I looked on eBay. I saw like only one thing has them, like a huge like box or something like that of those things, but it's like $500. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying that. Maybe they'll decide to suck it up and actually put it out in stores, because what their Twitter says is that it's only exclusively in movie theaters and not in stores, which is a bit disappointing for me. But regardless of that, I just saw the movie last night of basically, which was on the 28th of November. I just had like other stuff going on, and of course Thanksgiving got in the way of it coming out in the 19th of November. But regardless, I enjoyed it. I absolutely loved it. It was different, and there were some things that were a bit similar to the first movie, but it was still really good and 1,000 times better than I believe the reboot that shall not be named or mentioned. The cast is absolutely phenomenal. Like, basically, McKenna Grace, who plays as Phoebe, which is Egon's granddaughter, and basically they explain that he left the Ghostbusters team 10 years after the events of the first Ghostbusters because they were being sued out of existence. They couldn't afford their financial stuff, and everything was just going downhill for them. And I can understand after they basically explain that the ghosts all of a sudden people stopped believing in them, and they did their job too well. Now I can understand something like that because yeah, if they did their job too well, it's like what else can you do? You can't really make a business from not doing anything too much really. So that's understandable. So basically, it explains that Egon moved out to Oklahoma to basically try and. Oh yeah, I should mention that there are huge spoilers. So if you have not seen Ghostbusters Afterlife, I highly recommend you just don't listen to this podcast because you cannot watch this without seeing the first movie and seeing this in theaters because you seriously need to see it. So if you have seen it, please continue to listen. So anyway, it explains basically Egon moved out to Oklahoma and supposedly he's capturing ghosts, and then eventually he passes away, and so Egon's daughter and her kids, both Phoebe and Trevor, moved to Oklahoma, basically because they're being evicted from their house. So they move out, and Phoebe, I really love Phoebe's character. It's amazing because she acts so much like her grandfather, like so much like Egon's character. It's so uncanny. And it's just so great because she's really smart too. She's really really smart. Because eventually over time she grows onto the new characters that she makes friends with, like Podcast, who's basically a kid who likes to make a podcast, and then of course there's Paul Rudd, who is the teacher of the school that is in Oklahoma, that little city. I forgot what it's called. I apologize, but anyway, he's really really good in this. For Paul Rudd, he's really good in this. There are a couple other people in there, but basically, she discovers that Egon had all this ghost busting equipment stored there, like the ghost trap, the proton packs, all these other different things. Even the suits are there, and the Ecto-1 is there. They basically revive it. This is basically like what I like to call the passing the torch film, because there's been a handful of those, and I don't mind those at all because, of course, the old cast members are going to get old. Not everyone can live forever. So basically what they do is that they try to make characters, brand new characters from their family, and basically they pass it on, basically passing the torch of the franchise. Many movies have done this recently, like with Karate Kid. They did this with Cobra Kai by, having new characters or characters from their family, basically passing on the franchise to make it continue, and basically do the same thing. Star Wars, like the recent Star Wars sequels, have basically done the exact same thing. Not great, but they basically have done the exact same thing because the cast members are aging. So this is basically what it's doing, and this does it very well for what it does. So of course, with all the, there's all these weird earthquakes that are going on, and apparently there's been a couple of ghost sightings that have shown up, and they're like, oh my gosh, we need to do something. So basically, the kids try to figure out how they do this, and basically, Phoebe discovers later that Egon her grandfather was a Ghostbuster, and she's like, why didn't you tell me all these years? And there was a whole thing of the daughter saying that oh, he left us, he never cared, and all this stuff. But eventually that gets fixed later on, which is great. So basically, they realize that Gozer is trying to come back yet again because there was an ancient writing on the side of a mountain that was near their hometown of Oklahoma, and basically they accidentally let out one of the dogs of Gozer in there. Now I can't really tell exactly which one it is, because correct me if I'm wrong if you've seen this. It looked to me like when one of the dogs got out of the ghost trap, it looked like that the horns were in front of their head or something like that. It looked really different, so I couldn't really tell. But they basically escape to the side of that, and it's some kind of what do I want to say? Some sort of ancient hieroglyph or summoning of reviving Gozer or something like that. But anyway, they basically, accidentally summon the dogs back, and basically Gozer is back once again, basically doing the exact same thing, but still really cool. So basically, Phoebe and her new team try to pretty much stop this entire Gozer summoning yet again, and they try to do the absolute best they can to just try and, fight it out and try and stop this. And there's even like a little scene with like little mini Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in a Walmart that Paul Rudd encounters, and I'm not going to spoil that scene because it is too funny to talk about, because it's something that you would have to see in order to enjoy it. Like, really, I recommend that you watch the movie just for that scene, because that scene right there steals the entire show for the movie. But anyway, basically, it seems that they're like in trouble because they're about to capture Gozer, which was Egon's original plan, to capture Gozer and basically end it. And so the attempt to do that, it seems like they're about to be finished, but then eventually the original Ghostbusters returns after Phoebe attempts to call them, and all the original Ghostbusters do what they can to help to try and trap Gozer. And throughout the entire movie, the ghost of Egon has basically like been guiding them. And the way that they captured an older Harold Ramis in this, like how they CGI'd him, probably deep faked him by making his face on someone else's face. Basically, is like how Star Wars did, but it's like the way they did it was like so good, and the way that they captured it, of like how they showed that Egon's character did care about his daughter, how he did look over her life and all this stuff, but he basically did this to save them, to basically, this was for them, to keep them safe and all this stuff. He basically sacrificed himself for them. It's not that he didn't care, it's that he was doing this to save them, to protect them, just for them. And it was a real tearjerker. It really was a real tearjerker of a scene at the end. It was really great. And there are post-credit scenes, so if you if you didn't know that, if you watched the movie and you have seen it, there are post-credit scenes if you missed it. There is like one in the middle of the credits, and then of course one at the end of the credits. So yeah, if you watched that and didn't stay for the credits there, yeah, it's your mistake, buddy. So anyway, other than that, the movie was absolutely great and phenomenal. The beginning was slow. It was a bit slow, but that makes sense to me. I don't mind that, because you need build up for the story to basically pick up in order for the setup to begin. That's fine. And the middle of the film was definitely where it picked up. It was definitely where it was really, really great. It really was. And then the end of it, of course, was still really great and really entertaining to watch. The way that they did everything was just absolutely great. I really hope that if they do a sequel, that they do it even better. Because even though there weren't too many ghosts in this, and it was a bit of this sort of similar to the first film, it was still really good for what it was. It was really great. It looked like that if they were doing a sequel, that they would do a similar. They would basically, have it take place in the city this time. But regardless of that, it still was absolutely great and entertaining, and I'd watch it again. So yeah, that's basically the entire, what I like to call the proper Ghostbusters trilogy. This was definitely a film that was for Harold Ramis. I mean, it basically blatantly said right out there, it was for Harold Ramis. It was very great. It was very touching and entertaining, and it was just phenomenally awesome. It was just epically great. I don't know what else to say about it, but I just really hope that there's a better future for Ghostbusters. Of course, with the cast getting old and Bill Murray feeling like he didn't really want to be there or even be involved with the third Ghostbusters, sucks, but it was still really great for what they did and what they accomplished. So, it was really a really great movie. I hope this gets a lot more attention than the last one of what I like to call the reboot that shall not be mentioned or named. So yeah, I would definitely highly recommend Ghostbusters Afterlife. It was just absolutely great. I cannot wait to get this movie on DVD, and it was just perfect. It was just really great. And funny thing is that it was a long time ago before this movie came out, where I think I was a kid and I thought that maybe the third Ghostbusters movie should have kids in it. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, that was my personal thoughts on the film. It was just really, really great. I hope that if they do a sequel, that it takes place in the city, maybe, and they hopefully have more ghosts, hopefully more humor to it, more entertainment, and hopefully they have more action-packed, awesome stuff to it. I just really can't wait for what's to come next, if there will be. So yeah, other than that, that's pretty much all I have to say about this. I really hope you enjoyed this movie. I hope you get to see Ghostbusters Afterlife if you have not. But if you have, give me your thoughts on it. I really want to hear about it because this was great. This was absolutely great. This was a blast. Again, I apologize ahead of time for not making any episodes this entire November. I am sorry about that. It's just I just really have not been in the mood to make one. I was just feeling really tired and lazy, and of course I've been busy with like work and all this stuff, and Thanksgiving got in the way a bit, but hopefully I'll be able to make more. Of course, I have mentioned before that I would do it either weekly or bi-weekly, or basically when I said whenever I feel like I'm in the mood to. So I feel like that's fair enough. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you guys in the next one.